What is your opinion, or how do you have a conversation with the DM that has the motto, because I'm the dungeon master, that's why, when it comes to all their rulings, fair or unfair? Can you even have a conversation with a person like that? Now, before we jump in, I want to let you know that the May issue of Lair magazine is now available for my patrons. It features the following Dungeon Master resources: 2 D&D 5th edition adventures, 𝐑𝐂𝐄𝐒's Revenge, level 8 adventure, and the Worm Witch, a level 5 adventure, and each contain professional maps designed for use on virtual tabletops, 10 magic item curses that can be applied to almost any magic item, 5 encounters, each with its own virtual tabletop map, 10 random tables, 10 villains, most with their own custom stat blocks, and bonus content from the Dungeon Coach, several new magic tattoos, a magic tattoo system, and 3 new subclasses. When you become a patron, not only will you get the May issue, Vows and Vengeance, but you'll get the previous month's issue too, Might and Majesty. And then every month you continue to get more 5th edition resources designed to help DMs reduce their prep time and make their games even more awesome. You can get Lair magazine and several other patron-only benefits, such as voting on the videos I make and access to the patron layer on my Discord server by clicking that link to my Patreon page down below. That's my bigger question. Like, where do you even have a conversation? By saying, because I'm the dungeon master, that's why, by saying that, and it depends on the tone and the manner in which they say it, so I'm assuming a few things, but by establishing that it's my way because I'm the dungeon master and that's all I care about, I don't care about your reasoning or your arguments or anything to that. Like, they're already establishing that they are an unreasonable person, that they don't listen to logic, that they can't be swayed, that you can't persuade them one way or another. They've already established that. So how do you even have a conversation with them when they've already demonstrated to you that they won't listen to you and they don't care what you have to say? So how do you even start that conversation with a person like that? I don't know. I mean, you got 2 options. One option is probably the higher road, which I should probably recommend because that's what you should do, is to try to talk to them and be like, listen, man, like you're constantly laying down these rulings using the reasoning of you're the dungeon master, but you don't listen to any of us. Like, you just ignore what we have to say. You won't listen to reason or logic or anything. It's like you don't even care what we think or how we feel. You know, and that doesn't make us feel very happy about things. So you could try to talk with them and explain to them your point of view and how that position they're taking affects you as a player, and hopefully they can come around and understand that, oh, this is probably not a good way to treat people. And it's not a question of running the game. It's a question of how you treat people. Like, are you listening to them? Are you acknowledging their thoughts and perspectives and feelings? Or are you just, I don't care what you have to say, I'm the dungeon master and that's why? Like, it's less of a question of like a style as a dungeon master. It's more of a question of you as a human being. Do you acknowledge other people's existence and care about them? Or do you just want to stuff it to them and do things your way because you're the most important person on this earth and that's all you care about? So, so you can try to have that conversation, right? Yeah. So that's probably what you should do. That's probably the responsible, mature thing to do. The other thing you could do is find a different dungeon master who doesn't treat people that way too. That's another option, I suppose. Orange is having, oh my gosh, look at him. He's like, oh, look at my bald belly. I got a bald belly. We're shaming. Oh, he's gonna roll. But Orange, what are you doing? I gotta lick my butt. Okay, that's no longer appropriate. Thank you, Orange, for getting us demonetized. How do you deal with players that won't accept DM rulings? This is like the opposite of that question right there. Oh man. Okay, hold on a second. Oh, this is perfect. This is like the total opposite of it. So on the one hand, you have the dungeon master who's like, it's my way or the highway. Shut up and take it. And then the players are just like, yes, sir. We're gonna get some more, right? Yeah. And then on the other hand, you have the player when a player won't accept a ruling. And so I've had this happen. When the player won't accept a ruling, so my game tables, how I do it. Something comes up and I'll be like, well, this is what I think. And then a player might be like, well, have you considered this? What about this? Or blah, 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 blah. They'll present their case. I will listen to their case. I will consider their case, and then I will make a ruling. Sometimes I am swayed by their case and I will rule in their favor. Other times I am not, and I do not rule in their favor. But I listen to them. I acknowledge their point of view. I try to be fair. If it makes sense and is reasonable and is logical and does not have ulterior motives, sometimes there are ulterior motives and you gotta be wise to them, then I will rule in their favor and we'll move on. If I don't agree with their logic and I feel differently, I won't rule in their favor. I'll make a different ruling and then we'll move on. The expectation is that after I have made a ruling, we move on and we play the game. Occasionally, you get a player that's not good enough for them. It's not good enough that I acknowledged your thoughts and your perspectives and your feelings, listened to you, mirrored them back a little bit to show that I understood what you were saying, and then made a ruling and explained to you my logic and why I was making that ruling, even though it wasn't what you wanted. That's not enough to them. They're not satisfied with that. What that player has to do, they have to keep on arguing with you. So it's like, okay, a quick little conversation and ruling has now turned into a big rules argument with a player who just won't let it go. Players, when they do that, they're bringing the entire game down. Nobody else at that game table, almost none of the other players, I guarantee you, want to have this big rules argument in the middle of their game. They really just want to go kill monsters and eat nachos and eat pizza, and that's all they really care about. All right. They don't want to have this massive rules discussion. This one player does. And so they get into this argument, they get into this discussion. It brings the table down. The tension can be felt. People are not at ease because there's this discussion going on. And we know how most people who have played the game know exactly what this is. This has happened before. The player won't let it go and they turn into a big argument. And the dungeon master's like, dude, I made my ruling, man. Let it go. No, blah, 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 blah. And they keep dragging it on. So how do you deal with a player who won't accept a DM ruling? Very, very simply. Whoa, hold on. No. You don't understand. I've made my ruling. I'm done. I'm not changing my mind. No, you don't understand. It doesn't matter what you have to say. You're rehashing the same argument you gave me the first time. I listened to it. I disagree. I'm making a different ruling. This is what we're gonna do for now. That's the way it's gonna be. You need to stop arguing. It's not gonna help your case. You continuing to argue is actually just pissing me off more and making my dig my heels in even more. You have now, it's one thing to plead your case, right? It is another thing once I've made a ruling to then argue with me. I have no tolerance for that. You're pissing me off. You're ruining this game for everybody else and it needs to stop. Okay? Like that's what needs to happen right here because I've made my ruling and nobody here wants to sit here and have a rules discussion. So once I've made my decision, we need to move on. Now, if that's not good enough for you, and if that's a showstopper for you, well, then you can go walk right out that door because this isn't the way this game's going to work. We're not going to do this every week where I make a ruling and then you argue with me. We're not doing this every week. Either you're going to be satisfied with me listening to you and then making what I think is a fair ruling, or you're going to be satisfied with walking out that door because you are not going to have these rule arguments with me every single week over things. It's not going to happen. Okay. I've only removed 2 players from my games over the years. Both of them were removed in large part because of having these sorts of arguments with me. I have no tolerance for that crap. Nobody is benefited by those sorts of arguments. So I've removed 2 players, not solely, not only because of rules arguments, but they were a large contributing factor for being removed from the games. So I have no tolerance for that. It pisses me off. It makes my game unenjoyable. It makes the other players' games unenjoyable. You are not helping anybody by having those rules discussions, and it needs to stop. If that's not good enough for you, if it has to be your way or the highway, well then I don't know. You should go become a dungeon master or something, because then you can get your way. And then we're back to the first question, which is when a dungeon master won't listen to you and it's his way or the highway. So every dungeon master who is the dungeon master who won't listen to you and it's his way or the highway, that dungeon master used to be a rules lawyer who would argue with other dungeon masters until they finally got kicked out of all of their games and then became dungeon masters themselves. So we have come full circle here. Have a nice day. Yeah, Theodore, at some point you have to say, because I'm the DM, that's why. But there's a big difference. There's a big difference between listening to players and then making a decision and kind of just ignoring them and making a decision. I don't always rule in favor of what my players want. Ask any of my players. I don't always rule in favor of them, but I always listen to them, and I often do rule in their favor, but I always listen to them. Sometimes they make logical arguments and I go with them. Other times they don't, and I do it my way. And if they have a problem with that, I'm the dungeon master. But there's a totally different attitude and approach to that, what I just described, than a dungeon master who won't listen to the players and ignores them and just does it his way every time. So there's a difference there. It's a difference of attitude. It's a difference of approach. Like, I know what the difference is, and I hope that makes sense. Do you have any tips for scheduling sessions? Yes. Yes. Dude, scheduling is the #1 thing that leads to games fizzling and falling apart. It is the #1 thing. There have been polls. I have done polls. It is the #1 thing. The #1 thing that ruins games, that makes games fall apart. It's scheduling problems. It's scheduling problems. I have basically come to a system that mostly works with scheduling, and it's very, very easy. It's very, very easy. One, we pick a game. We pick a day of the week and a time when everyone can make it most of the time. Everyone, so all 5 of my players and me, Saturday at 4 o'clock. We can always do Saturday at 4 o'clock. So that's our game, Saturday at 4 o'clock. But here's the other thing. Every other week, I have found that when you always have the same day and time for consistency, very, very, very helpful. That allows people to schedule their lives around the fact that they have a game. So they know Saturday at 4 p.m. is game time. I don't schedule things during that time. I schedule it during other times. That way it's not impacting the game. Things will come up, sure, but for the most part, I try to keep that time free because I know it's game day. So a set day and time is immensely helpful, immensely helpful. Second thing for scheduling games, every other week. It depends on your players, it depends on their availability and stuff like that. I play mostly with adults that have full-time jobs, and many of them have families as well. And I have found that when you have a weekly game with adults who are busy and stuff, it's very easy for them not to come to the game, and they'll miss a lot of the game sessions. They'll give you nice, polite excuses and stuff like that. They might legitimately be busy, or they might just not feel like playing or something, and they're like, well, I could play next week, so I'll just skip this game session or something, you know. But I found that weekly games a lot of times can be very difficult for like adults to get to. But every other week is way more manageable. It's very, very manageable for most people. When you start to get to like once a month, then you're playing so infrequently that you forget half of the stuff that's happening, you know, and it takes forever to make any progress in the game. So I've found that every 2 weeks is a very good rhythm that allows for people to have lives that aren't just D&D. It gives the dungeon master time to prepare the game session, and you get pretty good consistency where players are able to keep busy working adults with families are able to keep that consistency if they want to, if they make it a priority in their lives. So I found that that works very well. I've also found that if you avoid canceling games or rescheduling when one person can't make it, you're going to save yourself a lot of trouble. You don't reschedule or cancel a game because one person can't make it. If you get into that habit, you find yourself going into this spiral of death. That's what I call it, where you're just running fewer and fewer games. You're almost never playing because there's always someone who can't make it or something, you know, or every so often or every other week or something, somebody can't make it. And then you're either rescheduling and you're going through this whole exercise of trying to find a day and time, an alternate day and time that works for everyone. So that can easily lead you to not even playing at all if you just reschedule every time somebody can't make it, or if you just cancel every time somebody can't make it. So I don't reschedule or cancel my games. We have a set day and time. If you can't make it, we're still playing D&D. We're still playing D&D. You're gonna miss out. Sorry, you know, you should be there. It's always the exact same day and time. If you want to play D&D, then yeah, plan for it. The other thing that I found too is that when you know that the gaming group is going to play without you, that is a strong motivator to be there. Psychologically, if you know that if you cancel and don't go, that they're just gonna, if you decide you're not gonna go, that you can't make it, and they're gonna cancel the game, well then you have no motivation. It's like, I'm not gonna miss out on anything. They're just gonna cancel or move it, so it's not that big of a deal. But if you know that you're going to miss out, it's loss aversion. You don't want to miss out, right? Then you're gonna make a stronger effort to actually be there and not miss the game. I've been running lots of games for 5th edition for a long time, and I have found that players rarely miss games. They rarely miss games. Part of it, I think, is because of the way I do scheduling. Part of it is probably just that the games are good and people enjoy playing them and they want to be there, you know. So there are different variables involved there, but I've had very good track record with not having players miss games very often. So yeah, and I think that in part is owed to scheduling. So there you go. There's some information for you. I'm a first-time dungeon master. Do you have any tips? How many videos have I published on my channel? I have a few tips. Specific questions will get you specific answers. Otherwise, I'm just gonna say, watch my videos. Sorry, I'm a jerk. I don't know what you want me to do. Luke, what do you do with a character when their player doesn't make it to a session? I call the player on the phone, see where they are. I drive to where they are. I get their happy butt in the car and I drive them back to the game. My other players sit at the table and they hold down the fort. Usually we're gonna have to restock the snack supplies by the time we get back. You can't just let them skip the game session. No, their butt's in the seat. They gotta be there playing. It's the way it works around here. Get their addresses and make sure you know their home addresses, where they work, all right? Have a vehicle on standby. Make sure it's full of gas. Make sure you're able to get places, okay? If you need to enlist the services of Uber or something to go get them, you know, and maybe like some sort of enforcer type, then do it. But you can't just let them skip your game session. It's insane. It's totally insane. You get their butts in that chair. That's how you do that. And then probably go to jail, so probably don't want to do that. Okay, real answer. So missing player, the simplest, easiest thing for you to do is to simply have one of the other, so you got 5 players, right? One goes bye-bye. Well, you got 5 characters and you just get one of these players to play that character. Bingo, bango, you're done. The game goes on. Happy, everybody's happy, skippy time. It's the most effortless, smooth way to do it. Have one of your existing players that's actually there, play their character. Boom, you're done. Rock and roll. It does require consent, right, from the gaming group that it's okay to do that, because there are players who don't feel comfortable having somebody else play their character. That's fine, you know. So have somebody else play their character. If they don't want to do that and they're like, no, well, then you got a couple options. First thing you can do, invite guest players. Have other people that maybe want to play the game but have never played before come and sit in and play the game. I call these, when I'm playing in person, I have on-call players that serve this purpose. And the beautiful thing about having on-call players that fill in when somebody's not there is that I get to know other players and see if, hey, this is a pretty cool dude, you know, she might be a good fit for the game if we ever get an open spot or whatever. And then in the future, when a player does leave the game, because players leave games, and there's a spot open, I can invite one of my on-call players who has been with us before that I know is pretty good to come play with us. Because I don't want to just do like a random invite to somebody who I've never played with before and give them a permanent spot in the game. That's nuts. They could make the whole game miserable for everybody. Anyway, that's my on-call system. Don't need it right now because we're all playing online. But when I'm in person, I use the on-call system. So you can have a guest player basically come sit in. The other thing that you can do is you could have all your players could have a backup player character basically. And when somebody's character is gone, then they just pull out their backup character, and their backup character, boop, is right there. And you have one player again playing two characters. Boom, there you go. Now, in that case, you have one character that basically leaves the game because the player's not there, and another character arrives and is in the game. Now, some dungeon masters will end up spending like hours of game time trying to explain how this could possibly happen. Holy crap, we need a story to explain how one character left and another character came, and you spend the whole game session figuring that out. And then you got to reverse it in the next game session when the player comes back. So there's a magical thing that we do in Dungeons and Dragons. It's hand waving. You do a hand wave and you just make the swap and you keep on playing the game. Is it gonna break somebody's immersion and their suspension of disbelief is gonna get shattered to all 9 places? Maybe. I personally don't care. It's the most expedient way to do things. So when I have a player, for instance, my Ancient Dragon game, they do not want people to play their characters. So when one person is gone, then another player's character will have another player will have a new character come in, their backup character. And we have this ongoing theme of tentacles. There'll be like darkness will coalesce in a corridor. Tentacles will swarm out, grab 𝐑𝐄𝐒 around the ankles, yank him to the ground, and drag him into the darkness. 𝐑𝐶eam giggling all the while, pulling out his weapons, getting ready to fight. And then a portal opens up above, and another person falls out onto the floor and collects themselves. And then both portals close back up. And you guys all see lying before you Jim Bob's new character who's going to be playing with you for this game session because 𝐑𝐶eam is gone. And that's it. Boom, you're done, and you keep on playing the game. So that is an option as well. So a few different options there for you. If a player cannot make the game session, as alternatives, sad alternatives to tracking them down and dragging them there, kicking and screaming, because yeah, you get in trouble for that stuff. It's the sad world we live in these days. How do you implant a plot hook for a side quest without giving the impression of how convenient? You don't. You just roll with it. It's life. Your players know the plot hook when they see it. Your players know a side quest when they see it. I have my Curse of Strahd players make fun of how many quests they have. It's like, oh, just to add that to the quest log. They have like 10 quests that I've given them that they could go do. You know, I don't try to hide it. It's like at some point, you know, you're playing a game. And you're just gonna recognize those things. And it is what it is. This is the game, you guys. I'm going to give you quests and I'm gonna give you side quests. That's the game. I'm not gonna try to go to too much trouble to hide it and disguise it because it's not worth my time. My players are gonna probably recognize it anyway. You know what I mean? And who cares if they recognize it? It's the game. They'll be like, well, you know, it's crazy. No matter what happens, like every fight we get into, we win. We win all of these fights. We fought a dragon and we won. It's crazy. We've played this we're level 12 now, and we keep on winning all of these battles. Wow, this is convenient. How is that? No, it's a game. At some point, you can't evade the fact that you're playing a game, and it's not worth trying. You know, you have to embrace all aspects of it. You have to embrace the game aspect of it, and you have to embrace the role-playing aspect of it. Both of those things live in harmony together. You know, you don't eschew one of them. They're both together and they coexist, and it's fine.